Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, this. This is the third instalment of our rather epic Panther build in conjunction with the Tank Museum at Bovington. And in this video, we're going to take a look at the crew. So, let's get on with it. Right, so let's get them out of the box. I confess I have actually already made a little bit of a head start on this. This is one of the commander figures, and I made a start on this one while I was building the tank, and the reason for that was because I wanted to have him in the turret, and I wanted to make sure he would actually fit before I went any further, which he does. I did actually have to shave some of his legs off to make him go in, but he does actually fit. So that's that. But we've also got... oh, really? Get off. So what we've got, there's a selection in a way, because if you look at the box, there are actually two commanders. There's one that stands in the hatch and one that sits, assuming, on the turret somewhere. This is the one I'm going to use. I don't know if I'm going to do that paint job because, quite frankly, I don't know if I can. But you know, we'll see. But yeah, so basically we're going to use 5 of the 6 figures and some of the accessories, and also what made me laugh, there are birds. And it's so weird because it's like when I was looking at the box and it says it here, the set also contains various accessories like headsets and binoculars plus 2 birds. It's like, okay. Why? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm actually quite glad they're in there and I plan on using them in the diorama, but it's a bit random. It's like just 2 birds, but still, anyway. So I've had a quick look at these and they actually look pretty good. They've got the usual mould lines, although they're not terrible, the mould lines. But on the whole, they don't look that bad. So I think we're going to do alright with these. So, yeah. But the birds. Anyway, so let's get started, I suppose. We may as well start with this guy, seeing as he's already out of the box. Just before we start, I'm going to change the blade on my knife, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about safety, because I've seen so many pictures and posts on Facebook and other social media of people slicing their fingers open with these knives. If you're changing the blade, this is how you do it, okay? Basically, get yourself a pair of pliers, lift the back, slide it forwards, and pull it off like that. Use pliers. Do not use your fingers because you will slice your fingers open. And conversely, when you go to put the new one on, put it in the pliers, like that, get it in position, and push it back. Like that. Don't try and do it with your fingers because you'll slice your fingers open. Okay? Seriously, these things are scalpels. They are literally scalpels. They are absurdly sharp. Okay? Just be careful when you're changing blades. Anyway, onwards. Right, so we've got the commander figure here, as I mentioned. And this is something you can do. I mean, these figures are actually pretty good. As you can see, there's quite a lot of detail on them. They're actually quite nice. There's a couple of mould lines which we'll get rid of. That's not the end of the world. But they are actually quite nice figures. But you can make them better. And I'll show you how. And I saw this on Facebook, and I wish for the life of me I could remember who had posted it, because I'd like to say thank you to them properly, but there you go. But basically what you do is, you see things like here, these seams, where the cloth is folded over. If you take your knife, take the point of your knife and go along that, like that. And what you want to do is basically just undercut slightly, and it makes that join, that transition, much more defined. It's time consuming and it's a pain in the neck, but it makes such a difference to do it. So like I say, just get your knife and just go under, and it's things like, because again it's like if you look here, right in there, it's just like a blunt V. There's no definition to it. So if you go in there with a knife and just undercut that, and you see straight away, just with a couple of little scrapes of the knife, how much better that looks. So I'm going to do all of these. Normally I would do this before I put his arms on because it has make it a little bit more difficult, but it is something that is well worth doing. The same on this side, look. Like that. But you see the difference that makes straight away. I mean, obviously it needs to be cleaned up a bit, but yeah, it really does make a huge difference. And you just go all round everywhere like that. And not only does it look better, but it makes it much easier to paint. And especially if you've got things like belts and straps and things like that. See, like here, let me just show you on his belt quickly. Because like here, you see there's a, I'm trying to keep it under the camera. The join between his belt and his jacket isn't very well defined, which makes it very difficult to paint. So again, if you just go in there and just undercut the belt slightly with the point of your knife, like that, and now you look at the difference between this side and this side, how much more sharply defined that belt is, and it makes it that much easier to paint because you haven't got to try and deal with that kind of blurred transition. It's now a very sharp transition. So, but I'm going to do the rest of these, and when I'm done I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like, and you see what a difference it makes. Right, so just to show you, and I'll try and do a bit of a side-by-side comparison, what I've done with this one. So as you can see, I've gone around his collar to define that, because otherwise you just end up with this, it's very difficult to get the definition between the shirt and the jacket. So I've done that. I've gone all around the edges of his jacket, as I mentioned before. I've gone around his belt, I've been around the medals, I've been around the underside of his jacket there to define that transition between his jacket and his trousers. I've done his pockets on both sides, and the little front pocket there. And also I've been around the tops of his boots where his trousers are bloused over them, and I've also redefined some of the detail on the boots themselves. Now it is a lot of work, that's taken me quite a long time to do that, but I think you can see the difference it makes, or hopefully you can see the difference it makes, and it certainly does make it a lot easier to paint. Although it's a lot of effort to start with, it's like so many things, it's all down to the prep, and it makes it much easier to paint afterwards, because you haven't got to deal with all these like fuzzy transitions. So I'll get on and do the rest of them, which is probably going to take several hours, and then we can start putting arms on and bits and pieces, and start putting some paint on things. So this is a perfect example really of what I was talking about. This is the commander's head, and if you look at the hat at the front here, it's fine, perfectly well defined, reasonably well defined, but then as we go around to the back and you look around here, there is basically no delineation between the hat and the hair. It all just blurs into one. So this is a prime candidate for this kind of treatment. So I don't know if I'll be able to do it with the camera here or not, but let me see if I can get in there and get it done. Because like, I don't know if you can see it very well on the camera, but you can see his hair there, and then the hat just kind of blurs into it. So I'll just come in around here and just create a a line, a demarcation between the hair and the hat. And go up and over the top of his ear like that. I don't know how well you'll be able to see what I'm doing here because it's very, very tiny and very fiddly, but hopefully you can at least get an idea. Right, there you go. That's a bit better, isn't it? So yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, and I'll do the rest of his head. I do like just around the edges of his hat as well. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when you're rescribing these, is getting away from that kind of problem, because it'll make this, it not only looks better, it'll be much, much easier to paint. So yeah, there you go. So now I've got them all cleaned up, I can put them together. What I'm going to do with some of them is I'm not going to put the arms on yet because I want to paint the hands first. But for the most part we can start putting these together. Right, let's get... Oh. I'm all fingers and thumbs this morning. This is actually a really awkward thing to hold. I'll tell you what, actually, what might be a better idea, just with this bit. I think this is where this Revel contactor might come in handy. Because this is one of those situations where it might be easier to apply the glue and then put it together. Oh. Right, there we go. That's it. There we go. Right. Well, that's a that's a pose, isn't it? Right, now his arms cross over, so we want to put his right arm on first, because his left arm goes over the top of the right arm. Right. Oh, if I can actually get the thing on. Stay. Right, that goes like that. See, this is the weird thing with this, is there's like a cutout in the underside of his arm there to go on his leg, but it doesn't seem to want to, unless I need to rotate his torso slightly. Let's see what that does. Maybe a bit more. Oh. Just talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Oh dear. This is going to be one of those days, I can see it coming. Right, okay, I think that's right. Now let's see if we can put this one on. I might put the glue on his... Oh. This is the only trouble with these things, is sometimes these little tubes get... they clog up really quickly. Oh. Oh. I can hear you giggling out there, so just stop it, alright? I might have to put some Benny Hill music on this. Right, we're getting, there we go, there we go. Now we're whistling Dixie. Sort of. Oh. Right. You see, now that arm doesn't line up. Oh, really? Okay. There we go. That probably took a lot longer than it should have done. Okay, I'll put the rest of them together, and then we'll think about putting some primer and things on them. Right, so I'm just going to fill in some of the gaps on some of these using the dissolved putty. You've seen me use this before. It's great for this kind of thing. So what we'll do is just get a little brush. I'll put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. And then it's just sort of like around here, around his arms and things like that in this particular case. It's just a case of filling in some of the more horrendous gaps. And one of the nice things about this putty is that you can clean it up with alcohol. So I'll show you in a second, but if I just put this on like this, and I'll do his other arm as well. Like that. We'll just let that dry for a minute. Okay, now that's dried a little bit. I've just got a cotton bud here with some isopropyl alcohol on it. And we'll just go in and just give it a wipe over. Like that. And what it does is it cleans off the excess and like helps work it into the joint. And it just smooths it all off, and it means you don't have to sand anything. So it's one of the great things about this dissolved putty is it's very, very easy to clean up. And while I'm doing this, I'd like to say a big thank you to my top tier patrons. That's Amy, Neil, Edwin and Howard. Thank you guys for your support. It is, as ever, much appreciated. There you go, you see. I'll just do one of the other ones again, just to give you another example. So there you see. And again, this join on the back. Like that. And there you go, you see. So instead of spending hours filling and sanding, you just put a bit of that on, wipe it off again, and you're done. Right, so I've put some grey primer on this. This is the high coat primer that you've seen me use before. And I'm going to start by painting faces and hands. So to start with, I'm going to use this Panzer Flesh Base, which is something I bought very cheaply a long time ago. It's actually pretty good. So we'll start with that. And I've got some in my wet palette. And what we want to do is just get a base coat on his face without going too mad, because what we don't want to do is end up obscuring any of the detail. So we'll just start like this, and the trick is, and again, figure painting is not my forte, so I'm kind of learning as I go with this, as always. But But the trick is, as I have seen from some very, very, very talented miniature painters, is to not go too heavy, because you don't want to obscure the detail. So I'm just going to go over his whole face to start with, and just do like a number of thin light coats and just build it up, rather than trying to blob it all on in one go and end up obscuring all the detail. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep it under the camera, but it's a bit tricky. So I will literally just go over the whole thing to start with, literally like in his mouth and everywhere, just to get it started. This is going to be fun, this one, because he's actually got his mouth open and you can see his teeth. So I'm going to have to paint his teeth. That's going to be exciting. But, you know, we'll do what we can. Alright, let's go around the back of his ears and the back of his neck. Oh. Figure out what colour to do his hair as well. Right, so what I'll do is I'll let that dry for a minute, and then I'll go back over and do another coat and just gradually build it up like that. But I'll do his hands as well, because this guy has his hands on his hips, which is why I haven't put his arms on yet, because what I want to do is paint his hands and then put the and then attach his arms and fill them and everything, and it will just mean that it will be a lot easier than trying to paint his hands in situ. There are a couple like this. Most of them have got like gloves on and stuff like that, so it's quite easy. It's just the fact that there's this one and got their hands on their hips. So I'm doing it this way just to make life a little bit easier for myself. So, but it's the same deal as his face, just, you know, a nice light thin coat like that. And the other thing to avoid doing is going back over the same areas that you've done, because you end up sometimes just like dragging the paint around. So it's you've got to be careful with it. And there you go, we're getting there. I think I'll do another coat or two of this and then we'll start working on some highlights and lowlights. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is do some highlights with this same thing, Panzer Ace's highlight flesh. So what we want to do is just go over like his cheekbones, his nose and things like that. So, but we want quite a thin mix. So, oh. It might look a bit horrible to start with, but trust me. We'll get there with it. So I'm just trying to keep it under the camera. So we'll do like the bridge of his nose. And basically all the highlights, that's what we're doing, is I say we're highlighting it. So we'll do his chin. And I say this will, it does look a bit off to start with if the camera would actually focus on it, but it will get better as we go. brow ridge. We are going to come and paint these eyebrows, because this one actually has eyebrows, which is quite a novelty for these. There you go, like that. And I say that does look pretty horrific at the moment, but we'll fix it. Don't worry. And we'll do his hands as well. So it's the same deal again. Basically, like the backs of his fingers. And the back of his hand, and you know, like that. That's pretty much all we need for the hand. It's just a little bit like that. Just do the end of his finger again. I'll do the other one. There we go. And I'll do all the rest of them as well, and then we'll come back and we'll basically do some shading and then blend it all together. Right, now we're going to switch to this shadow tone and do some lowlights. So I've also got a smaller brush, and what I'm going to do is thin this down again quite a lot. And I want to go in to all the shadows, so I want to go like in his mouth. And again, this is going to get toned down under his nose. Under his eyes. Does make him look like, a little bit like he's got mascara on to start with, but we'll fix that, don't worry. And then under his chin. Like that. You see? Try and get his top lip as well. There we go. And I'll do his hands. And in this case it's pretty much just like getting between the fingers. Like that. And now I'll let that dry, and then we'll come back in and kind of blend it all together. Right, and what we're going to do now is just, I've got a very, very thin down mix of the original flesh colour, and I'm just going to go back over this and try and blend it all back together again. Which, believe me, is quite tricky doing in front of the camera. But we'll manage. Oh, there's too much paint on that brush. Let's get some of that off. like that, you see. Now we'll let that dry, and then there's one more thing I want to do to it. Right, so this should hopefully be the last step. So I did paint his teeth, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a wash, and this is the wash I made in a recent video, so I'll put a link up to that up there. And this should hopefully just tie everything together. I've never used this for faces before, so it'll be interesting to see how well it works. I might actually have to put this on again after I've done his uniform and everything and done his hair to tie all that together as well, but I'll just put some on now. Just to finish him off, as it were. Alright, that doesn't look too bad, does it? Quite like that. Cool. Let's try his hands. And again, here we mainly just want to get between his fingers and that. Yeah, doesn't look too bad at all, does it? Cool. Right, I'll do the rest of these and then we can make a start on hair and uniforms and things. Okay, right, now we can start painting the uniform. So I've got this NATO Black XF69. I'm going to use this as the base coat. And you can see here what I've done. This is where I stuck his arms on. I just painted a little bit on just so I could put his arms on. And actually, as it turned out, I actually didn't need to do any filling on this at all. It actually went on really well. So I'll paint the rest of his arms, or the rest of his body, I should say. One thing I was thinking, and I did it with one of the other ones, I should have painted his arms before I put them on, or at least given them a quick coat just to make it a bit easier, but yeah, it's okay. So yeah, I'll give him a coat of this NATO Black and we'll go from there. And I'm just going to basically do the whole thing with this black, and then we can go back and fill in whatever details we need to afterwards. I'll have to be obviously careful when I go around his hands, and I'll switch to a smaller brush for that, but as I say, it would have made more sense to have painted that before I put his arms on, but it never occurred to me until I'd already put them on. I did it for the other one, but not this one. But still, never mind. Live and learn, as they say. So yeah, I'll just give him a coat of this, and then we'll come back and add some more effects afterwards. Right, the next colour we're going to use is another black, XF1 flat black, the basic black. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to do his belt and his boots, but we're also going to do all of the shadows. So for example, under here we're going to go around his lapels, like that, and all of these little all of the, like the wrinkles in his uniform and everything, we're going to do all of those. And as I said, we'll do his belt. But this is the nice thing about all these various Tamiya blacks, is the fact that you can paint everything black but using different shades of black, and you can get different effects. So it just makes it easier to do like contrasts on on, you know, like black clothing and stuff like that. So and it might not look like much now, but when it's done, you'll see the difference that it makes. And so we'll do the creases on his trousers as well. And it just basically makes it less sort of monochromatic. So it's not just black, it's actually got some sort of shading to it. Like that, you see. I don't actually know how well the camera will pick this up, but hopefully you can see what I've done. And as I say, I'll do his boots as well, and go up, you know, around the back of him and that. And then we'll come back and see what it looks like and see what we're going to do next. Okay, now that's dried, we've got this XF63 German grey, and I'm just going to dry brush very lightly the whole thing. Hence the other bit of tissue here. I'm just going basically like from the top down to hit all the highlights. Just got to be careful not to go over his hands. Right, hopefully you can see what's happening there. It's just basically blending those low lights in a bit better and picking up the highlights. And I'll just go very lightly over his boots as well, but not too much. I mean, obviously his boots and whatnot will get weathered once they're placed on the diorama, but for now it's just a case of getting like a proper finish on him. And the nice thing is that the combination of the German grey and the NATO black, it gives you like a bit of a faded black, so it makes it so it doesn't look like everything's quite so new and shiny. But you'll see it more once it's all dried. And the other thing to keep in mind whenever you're putting any finish on is what you're going to put on last. So whatever like varnish or clear coat you're going to put on will affect the way the rest of the colours behave. So, but you'll see that as we get through. But there you go. So the next thing to do is I'm going to give it a very, very, very light dry brush with wherever it's gone, our old friend XF55 Deck Tan, but that'll be a really, really light dry brush. And then we can start working on some of the details of his uniform, like the badges and his belt and things like that. So we'll get the Deck Tan out next. So here's our Deck Tan, and this is actually quite thin, this paint, so it goes on quite well. So But again, it's just a very, very, very light, and it also almost it gives it a kind of a dusty appearance. But I'm just going very, very lightly. The brush is like barely touching the surface. There you go, that's all it needs for that. And now we'll start on some of the details. Right, and now the fun really starts, because I've got to paint all the badges and everything. So to start with, I'm going to use this Citadel white scar to do the cross and his ribbons and bits and pieces. So this is going to be interesting. Right, I'll try not to make a complete dog's breakfast of this. Right, that's that. Now we have to do this ribbon. So this is white on the outside and red in the middle. So I'll just do the whole thing white to start with. And then we'll come back and do the red in a minute. Like that. So we'll let that dry for a minute, and then we'll do the red. Right, and while that's drying, I'll I mean, it'll only take a minute to dry, but while it's drying, I'll just do his belt and his badge, because this badge here is silver apparently. Like that. And his belt buckle. Like that. There we go. And actually, while I'm at it, I'll do the eagle on his forage cap, which is fun because I can barely see it. So there we go. Oh dear. That's it. Oh, right, let's do the red. Oh, I just realised I didn't do the other badge on his cap. I need to do that white first. That's it. Right, now we'll do the red. So this is Citadel Ruby Red. Oh, if I can get it open. There we go. Right. Everybody hold your breath. Nobody breathe. we go. Doesn't look too bad, does it? Right, and then we've also got to do a dot in the middle of that white, which is going to be exciting. There we go. There's supposed to be like a blue border as well, but I'm not doing that. So I think what we can do now is oh, I've got to do his shirt. That's the other thing I've got to do. That needs to be filled grey. Let me do his shirt quickly. So this is XF65 filled grey, and we'll just do his shirt collar. And again, this is why we scribed those lines earlier, to get that delineation between the collar of his jacket and the collar of his shirt. There we go. Right, we'll let that dry for a minute and then we can stick his head on. Right, now let's stick his head on. Right, there we go. So we'll let that dry and then we'll give him a coat of matte varnish and he'll be done. Right, so there he is with a coat of matte varnish on him. I just used the XF86 flat clear. So he's just had a coat of that, and you can see the way it's unified all those colours quite nicely, and toned down some of the more excessive bits. But yeah, he's looking pretty good. So I will go ahead and do the other four, and then we'll see what they look like in situ, as it were. So yeah, I think we're getting close now. And here is our finished article, or articles as the case may be, in situ more or less where they're going to go. So all I've got to do now is make a diorama for them to go on. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with how this came out. As I've mentioned many times, figure painting really isn't my forte, but yeah, these have actually come out quite well, and I have learned quite a lot about painting black as well, which has been useful. So yes, I hope you are enjoying this little series for the Tank Museum. And remember, once all this is done, this will be being auctioned to benefit said museum. So I hope you'll all stick around and bid generously. Of course, you're welcome to join us in the staff canteen on Facebook, should you wish. And again, my usual little beg that if you happen to fancy joining me on on Patreon, I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying this little series, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers. Bye.